Good afternoon, class. Today I will be refuting the claim by Heidi Gascon that Planned Parenthood is a vital part of the United States healthcare system. Ms. Gascon claimed that Planned Parenthood provides affordable access to various services, as well as offering various services for the LGBTQ community, and how Planned Parenthood is also the single largest provider of sexual education in the United States. So, Ms. Gascon's first claim was that Planned Parenthood provides affordable access to various health services. One of her statistics claimed that 41% of all Title X participants went to Planned Parenthood, despite Planned Parenthood being only 13% of Title X locations. However, people served by Title X are not exactly indicative of the population. 4 million out of the 325 million people in the United States, according to US Census data, went to Title X. However, that is only about 1.2% of the population. So if you use the 41% figure that Ms. Gascon gave, that's roughly 0.5% of the population using Planned Parenthood services. 0.5% of the population is in no way indicative of the population. It's far too small of a sample size. Finally, Ms. Gascon did not seem to explain why these services provided were necessary. Her claim states that they provide the various services. However, there is no connection made to these services being essential to the United States healthcare service. Her second argument was that Planned Parenthood provides very important services to the LGBTQ community. So, yet again, we see roughly about 4.5% of the population being used to indicate a much greater portion of the population. Well, LGBTQ rights are important. 4.5% of the population does not indicate that something must be mandatory. Another argument that she used in her LGBTQ community services was that they offer affordable hormone therapy. However, Planned Parenthood offers what's known as informed hormones, where a transgender person can go into Planned Parenthood and simply request hormones. This is not a holistic approach to a transition for a transgender person. Most transgender people have a designated doctor who they go to who checks in on them. Planned Parenthood simply has a prescription that they give to a transgender person. It's an inefficient way of providing a needed service. Finally, Ms. Gascon mentions how Planned Parenthood provides support groups to said LGBTQ people, specifically citing transgender communities. While support groups are helpful, they have been demonstrated to not be the most efficient way at helping trans people affirm their identity. It's better to simply have communities where they are recognized as their chosen gender or pronouns. So while an attempt is being made by Planned Parenthood, it is not the most proper and efficient way to help transgender people. Finally, her claim said that Planned Parenthood is the single largest provider of sexual education, specifically citing how they reach 1.5 million people across the US. However, despite reaching 1.5 million people, there are still 3 million unplanned pregnancies. So they are only reaching they're not reaching as many as could be potentially taught. So there is somewhat of a lack of effectivity in that. Finally, providing education is not the role of the healthcare system. According to the American Public Health Association, the purpose of healthcare is primarily curative services, such as treating illnesses and injuries to individuals with relatively little attention prevention. So the healthcare system is supposed to be reactive, not proactive. So by providing education on this matter, the Planned Parenthood is perhaps overstepping their boundaries and not performing what is expected of the United States healthcare system. Thank you very much.
All right, I thought you identified the advocate's proposition very clearly, and there was a good reminder of what their secondary claims were. You followed the structure, your signposting well as you go along. Your challenge on the first point about affordable access I thought was interesting. I assume, you guys have called it Title X, I assume it's Title 10, but that's just me. The way you kind of diminished the significance of that was, I thought, pretty reasonable given the amount of people that fit in that category versus the totality of the population. You do suggest that it's a relatively minuscule part of the population that we're dealing with and is being provided services here. I think it might have been helpful to show that there were alternative services that are available to these folks, and that might have made your argument a little bit stronger, but diminishing the argument, I think, is probably a pretty good way to go. It would have also been helpful. I did not hear a source citation on the first point. It wasn't until the third point that I actually heard a source citation. You're generally using the advocate's statistical information and then putting it in the context of a larger number, which is okay, but the one about that it's challenging the essential nature of the job that's going on there, I think you could use a little bit of information on. On the LGBTQ category, you did the same kind of thing with the population versus the number of people that are being served. That was okay. The information about affordable hormone therapy as opposed to informed hormone therapy, I thought that was interesting information. I didn't get any source on that, and there ought to be a little bit more of an argument explaining why this is probably not the best strategy for people in that situation. I understood your argument. I think there's probably some proof that goes along with it, but I didn't get a source citation on this. Why isn't it okay for people to just treat themselves with the hormones that they get from Planned Parenthood? Why is it a bad idea for them to be doing that as opposed to what most people going through transitions usually do? I think you need to make a bigger argument about that on that particular point. The support group argument is also a good press here. Again, there's no evidence here. You've got a reasonable press on that particular point. That's okay. And then on the last point, you're doing the same thing. This is an interesting one. They get 1.5 million people that they see a year, and there's still 3 million unplanned pregnancies. Apparently they're not seeing the population that they need to see the most. That's the way you interpret it. I'm sure that they would interpret it the other way. Otherwise we'd have 4.5 million pregnancies a year. That's the way they would probably put it. The argument that says that the role of the healthcare system is not educational, the quote that you have, I think, suggests that. I'm not sure if that's you're using it as a position that's the healthcare provider's position. I'm not sure. It sounds like the quote might actually be an evaluation of the healthcare provider's situation, so I'd have to look at the context of that. It's a reasonable point. I think one of the things you might want to point out is that there are other educational groups that provide those kinds of services. My guess would be, for instance, if you based it on the totality of numbers, that the American public education system is the largest provider of sex education in the country, and that children between X ages are much more likely to be exposed to education about contraception and other issues in a school environment, and they're much more effective, and that maybe that would be a better strategy than hopefully catching up with people who are searching for Planned Parenthood, that sort of thing. All right, but it was well structured and easy to follow. Thank you.